All right. Video 1 of the digestive system. This will take you through the first 3 pages of your guided notes. Please be sure that you have those out in front of you while you're working. You should be filling them in as we go along. Our essential questions, the idea we really want to keep in our head as we're hearing all this information, is how has the food you eat changed into energy and resources for your cell? So earlier in the year, we talked about water, why water is important in your body. And we know from maybe having watched survival shows in the past that you die after 3 days without water. You would also die without food. We all know we need to eat to survive, and you can last about 30 days without food before you actually expire. So food is very, very important. So we have to know why. Why do our bodies need foods? And that's the question we're really going to be answering here. So I'm going to play this video because I think it's really awesome. This is an x-ray of someone eating. He's going to start with solid food and then switch to liquid. It's very cool. So the digestive system uses this process known as digestion. Digestion is the process where large molecules, which we know are called polymers, are going to be broken down into small forms, which we know are our monomers. Now, the reason that your body needs to take big molecules in but break them down into small parts is because your cells are very tiny. You are a collection of cells that need to stay alive, work together in order to keep you alive. Every single one of your cells needs resources, so atoms to build itself and energy to run itself. Those cells are going to get those resources, those atoms, and that energy from the food you eat. But we need to make sure first that those big molecules that you take in are converted down into small molecules so they can actually enter the cell. And that's what the digestive process does. So this is a summary here. Humans get the energy and materials they need to live by eating. So it is you literally are what you eat. So if you think about your skin cells, your hair cells, the cells in your eyes, all of that stuff is made from the resources that you took in by eating. So this is why you have to eat, and also the energy. So as you move your hand to write some of the answers down, that energy, that ATP that each of those cells is using in your muscles to move your hand, originally came from a glucose molecule that you ate in your food. So this is why you have to eat. What we're going to do now, so we know that big idea, large molecules have to get broken down into small, simpler parts to be used by your cell. But in order to talk about this like biologists, we need to have vocabulary. We need to have our terminology to talk about large molecules and then what they're getting broken down into. And we have this vocabulary. This is what we did in our organic molecules, our first really biology unit of the year. So what I'm going to do is on the bottom of the first page, your entire second page, and the top of your third page, you have graphic organizers that I want you to help review, recall some of that vocabulary that we talked about from our organic molecules. So you're going to review the polymers and monomers of your macromolecules. So complete those right now. Take about 5 minutes, do it all first, and then come back and check your answers here. All right, so you should have completed your you should have completed all 4 of your organic molecule graphic organizers. We're going to review them really quickly here. So carbohydrates, we know the polymers are called polysaccharides. Poly meaning many, saccharide meaning sugar. So carbohydrates, the large ones, many sugars combined together. And those are going to break down into disaccharides. So these are like your maltose, which we might find in brewed beverages, and also in malted milk balls. Also sucrose, which if you're making any brownies, cakes at home, you're using your disaccharides. And those will break down into your monosaccharides, so your single sugars. And these are going to be things like fructose, which we find in fruit, and glucose, which is very important and we'll talk a lot about in the digestive system. Next one, lipid digestion. So I gave you which hopefully you figured out was triglycerides. Because we remember triglycerides, that's that dietary fat. So if you eat a steak and it's got that fat ring around the outside, if you eat that, you are eating triglycerides. So triglycerides are going to break down into, just drop my wedding ring, glycerol and fatty acids. Glycerol and fatty acids. If you gave me numbers, so if you said 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids, fantastic, good for you. Next one, proteins. So we know that our polymer of proteins are our, hopefully you got this, polypeptides, poly meaning many, peptide named for those bonds that form between our monomers. And those are going to break down into smaller peptides, maybe dipeptides. And then eventually they'll break down into our protein monomer, which is amino acids. Those are your monomers, those small building block molecules that repeat to build proteins. Last one, so nucleic acids, the polymer, probably our easiest one to remember because it's the same name as the general monomer, the general macromolecule. So the polymer are also called nucleic acids. Those break down into, hopefully you got it, nucleotides. Now this is where in our unit we sort of stopped. We said monomers are the building blocks of our nucleic acids, but nucleotides themselves are made up of 3 parts. What are those 3 parts? Hopefully you got this. In no particular order, we have the phosphate group, your sugar, and your nitrogenous base. So those are the 3 parts that come together to make a single nucleotide, so a single monomer of nucleic acids. So once your digestive system takes in a nucleic acid, it breaks it down into nucleotides, and that gets broken down even further into those blocks that make up a nucleotide. So this entire process is driven by enzymes. Enzymes is the unit we just did, and we do this right before the digestive system because without enzymes to lower that activation energy and make this process of breaking large molecules down into smaller molecules, you would not be able to survive. Living things would not be able to exist because the amount of time that it would take for your body to break a large molecule like starch, which is in our drawing right here, down into glucose would be an incredibly long time, and it would be very energy costly, take a lot of energy. Enzymes are going to speed up these reactions, going to turn the starch from maybe some pasta that you ate or for a sandwich, something with bread in it, down into glucose, which can travel through your circulatory system, through your blood, enter cells, and be used by your mitochondria to make ATP, make that energy for your cells. This is hugely important. So right here, we have an example of what happens with our carbohydrates. So this is just an image for you guys to remind yourselves. So up on the top left-hand corner, you have your disaccharides. Now we know that they have a bond in between them. You guys built this. And if we add water, we know that hydrolysis, hydro meaning water, lysis meaning break apart. So we're going to break apart using water and we can form our monosaccharides. And that's how this happens. Enzymes will actually come in and they will speed up the process of hydrolysis to form monosaccharides. Digestion of fat, again, we have our triglycerides. So if we look on the left-hand side, we have our glycerol molecule on the top and then 3 fatty acid chains coming across. Enzymes are going to break apart your glycerol from your 3 fatty acid chains, again, using hydrolysis. So they add water to break these apart. This is just showing you sort of this is a structural model, so showing you where the actual atoms are in your triglycerides, following you through the process. We know that because you're going to break 3 fatty acid chains off, you're going to create 3 water molecules. So you're doing hydrolysis 3 times. Proteins, again here, through hydrolysis, are going to break apart into their amino acids. These blue structures we have right here, these are your R groups. So remember proteins, there's 22 different ones because there's 22 different R groups, variable groups that will attach on your basic amino acid structure. And here's kind of a general process of that happening. So a water molecule getting removed, breaking apart. And last one, your nucleic acids. So nucleic acids breaking apart. And again, the variable part is blue right there because those are your nitrogenous bases. So some of those will be adenine, some of them will be thymine, some of them will be cytosine, and some will be guanine. If we're talking about DNA. If we're talking about RNA, no thymine, we'll have uracil instead. All right, quick quiz. So lipids are broken down into what building blocks? Hopefully you got this. Fatty acids and glycerol. Question 2, carbohydrates are broken down into what building blocks? Hopefully this is all coming back to us now. The building blocks of our carbs are monosaccharides. Number 3, proteins are broken down into what building blocks? Those are our amino acids, Number 4, nucleic acids are broken down into what building blocks? Good, hopefully we got this one. Nucleotides, those are our building blocks of our nucleic acids. Now nucleotides are broken down even further. So we start with nucleic acid, we get to nucleotide, and then if we break those down even more, what do we get? Oh, that star's a little high. It should be on sugar, phosphate, and base. Sugar, phosphate, and base. Those are our parts that make up our nucleotide. All right, so hopefully you had a good review. Make sure you filled out through page 3 on your guided notes. And stay tuned for part 2 of digestion.